People of Yarmouth County video series, made possible through the Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage Forward Fund, focuses on our region of Yarmouth County and some of the communities and cultural identities that encompass it. We want to showcase one of the most important parts of our community, which is our people. The stories told in our 6-part video series are excerpts from longer interviews conducted by the Yarmouth County Museum and Archives staff. They are stories of both the past and the present. They are memories told by people of Yarmouth County. Some of the stories are funny, some are sad, and some will make you think. On behalf of the Yarmouth County Museum and Archives, we'd like to say a very special thank you to all the participants who took part in this project. We loved hearing your stories.
Well, my name is Susan Winship. I live in South Ohio, Yarmouth County, and my background is planter and loyalist.
Okay. My name is Charles Winship, husband of Susan Winship. I'm from South Ohio, Yarmouth County. That's where I was born and raised.
Well, I grew up in Yarmouth. I was born in Liverpool, but at the age of 1 I came to Yarmouth, and my whole life has been pretty well in Yarmouth, and it was a very good childhood. I lived in various houses around the town, but eventually I grew up on Parade Street, and we came to the museum when it was the church. This was our home church, and a lot of my activities centered around that. I was part of the junior choir and the Sunday school and the CGIT group and Explorers, and then the senior choir and the youth group. And eventually I went to Halifax to work, and is that enough for now? Mm-hmm.
Okay. They tell me I was born in Yarmouth. I don't remember that because I was apparently 2 when I left, or when they took me out of Yarmouth, because my father was from the country. He married a Yarmouth girl. And so I moved to South Ohio, the village of South Ohio, just outside of Yarmouth when I was 2. That's what they tell me. I have to take the word for it. From there on, I was raised in the village of South Ohio, and through the years, as I got older, I got involved with many things. I guess I could name quite a few, but some of the activities that I did as a younger person in the village of South Ohio was one of the interesting things. Particularly was at Christmas time. My grandfather started the business cutting Christmas trees and selling them to the people in town, in the Yarmouth town, as well as small spruce trees, perhaps 3 or 4 feet high, that they poked in around houses for banking the houses for the winter, and brush for the gardens. My father then carried that on, and then I worked along with him, and then it was passed on to me. So that was back in the day before sheared Christmas trees. They were just homegrown Christmas trees, undecorated. So that was really interesting. I worked on other jobs. I worked with a construction crew where we brought buildings down, old buildings down. The interesting part about that was that during that time, most of those buildings were brought down by hand, every bit of it, from the roof to the ground. And I was part of that. Actually, I guess I'm not proud of it now, but I was part of the bringing down the Grand Hotel just up the street. As a young person, I helped take up the hardwood floors and do the different things. But the other interesting part with that too is, back in the day, they didn't just wreck everything like they do today and haul it to the dump. It was taken apart by hand, and I would say 85% of it was probably sold to the public. They would come in looking for old light fixtures, doors, doorknobs, all that kind of stuff. So it was recycled. It was an early recycle program that was going on without even realizing it. So that was fun as well. And of course, up through the years, I was involved with many different groups. I was caretaker for the South Ohio Cemetery for 10 years. I worked over a lot of people there. Nobody bothered me. So that was good. And again, I could go on. There was numerous. I worked at the Yarmouth Ice Cream and Dairy in Milton. That was really, really fun as well. Back in the day, they used to deliver the milk in the old glass milk bottles with the carrying case, which we have home. A carrying case carried 6 milk bottles, glass milk bottles at a time, and the men would carry them in their arms. Strawberry bran butter was another favorite that they did there at the dairy, and that was done up in different size packages. A lot of it was done in 1 pound packages, and it was divided into 4 squares. And that was kind of neat because when that was delivered door to door, it was placed in their mailboxes at the time. So they knew, the homeowners knew that when the mail truck went through, the milk truck went through, that they had to go to the mailbox to get their butter. So that was kind of neat too. Yeah.
Well, I was in Halifax for a few years, and I went to Europe for a couple of years as well, traveling, and enjoyed that. But Yarmouth was home, and this is where, you know, the family was. So it was just natural to come back. And I've always, I'm not really a city person. I grew up in town, but I always liked the country. But Yarmouth was just the place to be, and still is.
Yeah, I'd have to say myself as well. Like I say, I was born and raised here, and lived all my life here so far. And I've never really had a hankering to travel to other places or live in other places. I did when I was 17. I moved to Halifax for 2 years, just because work was not so plentiful here, the work that I did. So I moved to Halifax for a couple of years, worked up there, but in 2 years I only missed 2 weekends not coming home. I traveled every weekend, mainly because I was after her. So anyway, family was a big thing for me too, and all the family was here, and I too am not a city person. I like the slower, relaxed pace of life myself. So it was important for me to spend as much time home as I could. So.
Well, I think it's a wonderful time to celebrate our country, and being 150 years old, we're very young in the world, on the world stage, but I think Canada is very well represented with the activities that are going on, and what we do in the world, and it's just nice to be able to celebrate that we've been here for 150 years, and we're doing well, and it's just a good time to celebrate and reflect on the things that have happened in the past and what's been accomplished, and look towards what the future will be.
I guess for me, I agree with most of that too, but I guess the first thing I'd have to do is take a look around at our country around us, you know, and the world around us. The world is not as small as it used to be. I mean, really, you can go...
Or as big.
Pardon me?
Or as big as it used
or,
to be.
What did I say, small? Oh, yeah. It's not as big as it used to be, that's correct. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that being said, what I'm saying is you can fly most anywhere in the world within 8 to 10 hours. Now, back then, that wasn't even thought of. But I look around and I look at these other countries. There are countries that are extremely poor, that's almost, you wonder how that could even possibly be in this day and age. How can that still be that these countries are so poor? There are countries that are very rich, but they're not very well managed. That creates many, many problems. And sort of bring this around to Canada. Canada is not without its problems, but Canada seems to deal with their problems quite well. And I can't imagine not being a Canadian. We are extremely fortunate when it comes to living in this place called Canada. And I think we need to understand and take that a lot more serious than some of us do.
Okay, my full name is Eric Charles Smith, but I go by Chuck. So, yeah, and I identify culturally, I'm an African Nova Scotian black person. Yeah. It's gotten better. The African Nova Scotian community, I would say, from when I started, when I grew up, there weren't very many opportunities. Black people weren't getting very many opportunities in stores anywhere. I mean, we were limited to, I would say, labor type jobs, and there were. And I think that's one thing that has changed so much and it changed when when the bigger stores came in, the big, I would say, stores that were like national wide. The Zellers, the Walmarts. Walmart is just quite recent, really, but that's when it changed, when there was more opportunities. And when I was young, it was very, very difficult for black people to get jobs in stores, to get jobs in certainly banks or whatever. And so it was not that good. And there was a lot of, I would say, and I mean, discrimination from that point of view when people applied for work and that kind of thing. And I mean, I say that a lot of it would have been subtle and that kind of thing, but the lack of black people employed in stores, in let's say banks or other institutions, was limited. So I think that's changed, which is a good thing. That's changed, and you'll see more people employed in the African Nova Scotians in our areas, in like the chain stores and things like that. So that's positive. I would say in tourism, I'd say waitressing, tourist type jobs. Let's say we look at with the major motels and hotels. You still don't see a lot of people that look like me that are working in those jobs in our town, in Yarmouth town. So I'd say that's an area that still needs to be worked on. The thing is, a lot of issues, a lot of people who were, let's say, ambitious in my community, were well educated, left. And that's when I mentioned that about migration. The migration started earlier for people of African Nova Scotian descent from this community. I mean, I had an uncle that worked as a porter on a train. He left Yarmouth to go and was in Montreal for 40 some odd years. I'll give you another example. The school system. My sister's teacher was. She couldn't find employment in Yarmouth, and so she's worked in Halifax and that kind of thing. So those were issues that were prevalent in when I was young. It was difficult to get employment as an African Nova Scotian in this community. Yeah. It's a good question. Yeah. Well, what it really means to me, I guess, is that you know, Canada has a lot to celebrate because there's been a lot of improvement over the years in Canada itself. I mean, it means what I've seen is diversity, and that's what I really like about Canada. And I'm talking because I have relatives in Toronto, and I go to Toronto. It's a whole different world. Diversity is incredible. I think that that's creeping slowly but surely out into the smaller areas, you know, and I think that that's the big change. And I think that Canada, 150 years, Canada has diverse. It's welcomed people from all over into the major cities, and I think eventually that will go into the smaller communities, but it takes time, you know, and that kind of thing. But I think, so the 150 means we're celebrating the fact that we've diversed, that, you know, I mean, also, I think we've got a little bit more nationalism now than we had. Like the U.S. is when they're really into that, but I think we're starting, our younger people, I think, more proud of Canada than when I was coming up, you know, because we have big brother down there. They teach that right from the start, about pride in their country and that, and you see it just bubbles in them, you know. We call them American and all that, but they're proud of their country. They're proud of their town. They're proud of their state, you know. And I think that's creeping into our area. So to me, the 150 means we have a lot to celebrate because we've made advances, and certainly from, I think, becoming, like, globally, we're so well respected compared to some other, because I think we endorse diversity, and we welcome immigrants, and I think that's happening, and that's why I like Toronto, because you see, when I go there, being a black person, I don't feel that, because I'm just one of many diverse people. And that is, to me, is a good person, because really living in Yarmouth as an African Nova Scotian, or we're always one among many, and that's just the way it is. I mean, that's a fact of life, right? And as you go up, like as you go up through school, you're the only one in your class. You're the only one. Maybe when I went to university in 1969, there might have been 5 or 6 black people from Nova Scotia who were what we call indigenous black people that were from Nova Scotia. There were probably maybe another 5 or 6 from West Indies, and might have been a couple from Africa in those days. And that's changed a lot now in the universities. But so, and that puts a lot of pressure on you as a black person. Yeah. So that's what 150 means to me. Yeah.
My name is Jim McLeod. I was born and brought up in Yarmouth. I've been a lifelong resident of our town of Yarmouth all my 73 years. As I said, born and brought up in Yarmouth. Went through Milton School, the old Milton School on Brunswick Street, and then graduated from grade 6 into grade 7 high school, and grade 9 through grade 12 at the old high school, of course. And from there off to Dalhousie University to study pharmacy. And graduated from Dalhousie University in 1967, I think. Such a long time ago. And so came back, of course, to live in our town of Yarmouth and practice pharmacy for altogether, counting as a young boy, almost 60 years. And on the main street as a delivery boy, and finally retiring as a pharmacist on December of last year, 2016. So it's been, some people might, sometimes I think I've had a very narrow range of just living in one square of the downtown, but I think I've changed with the times, and our current pharmacy, which is now owned and operated by David Cogan, we've changed with the times so that we're current and continue to be current. So, love my work. It's my philosophy sort of is it's not the end of the day, it's the journey to the end of the day, which is important. I remember working as a pharmacist from 1970 as a registered pharmacist through until currently. Main Street in the 50s and 60s was a thriving Main Street with small stores, jewelry stores, little stores you could buy penny candy and things like that, and clothing stores and women's clothing and men's clothing stores. There were lots of what I call little stores, like 1,000 square feet or 1,200 square feet. Some of them were bigger. The old Royal Store was a larger department store, the first department store in our town, actually. In the 70s, I don't know why I remember, but 1973, the first shopping center came to town where Zeller's, the first mall, was and just on Stars Road. And the Zeller store was the first major department store in our town. That was in 1973. And that would have, I would say for a lot of people, would have an adverse effect on the success of the downtown merchants. Again in 78, or following in 78, the Kmart mall was developed, and that had an even more detrimental effect to the store, to the downtown stores. And then going way beyond that, the internet and online shopping occurred in the late 80s, early 90s. And so that today, I working as a volunteer counselor for our town of Yarmouth, trying hard to revitalize the downtown, and so that I can say to my children and grand and great-grandchildren that not only did I live through maybe the best of times from my point of view, but I'm making it better for you people to live through the good times, grow up here and enjoy your life here, and yet achieve some of your goals. So I think that's an important part, and I enjoy that. That's a challenge, and municipalities don't have. We never have enough money. We have trouble balancing our budget, so that's always a compromise. So you just do the best you can. So currently, I think you girls can see the change on Main Street with a water and sewer upgrade, and that's huge. I mean, if you were to go back 120 to 140 years, and you would see how the men were trying to make pipes, and there was pipes, lead pipes, but they're also trying to make holes in the earth for water to flow. Wow, they didn't have the equipment that we have today. For me, there was work here, work I loved to do, and work I wanted to continue on doing, and so I was very happy. I recall having offers offers to work in the city of Halifax at that time, but declined because I wanted to live and work in a little rural community and make it my life. Well, when we first started talking about it, for me it was memories. So 1967 would be very close to my graduation year, and then started my career as a pharmacist here in my favorite town of all time, and I was 1 year away from being married to my current wife, and So year 1967 was the year of the Expo 67 in Montreal. I think just starting out in that year, I didn't have, obviously not old enough to sort of reflect back, but looking back and looking ahead, I think it's important to look back to see where you are, where you've come from, and if you have an understanding and appreciation of where you've come from, and knowing that the world is changing, as I've said a couple of times, ever so quickly, you need to be prepared to change with the changing times. So by doing, as I mentioned before, some of the infrastructure upgrade, it makes us more aware, it makes us more eligible for change. We can change even more quickly and more radically if necessary. The downtown of yesterday was, as I said earlier, a collection of small stores that served the community well and the county well. Now we have a collection of stores in our county, in our town and county, that serve the community hopefully even better. We need to get people to shop in the area, and I'm going to tease a little bit here, do less online shopping, but shop for all your needs in our area. So it's certainly a Canada 150, it's a celebration moment, it's a moment of reflection, and then now a moment of looking ahead and see how you can play a role and seeing us become a better, even better town to live in.
My name is Rory Lennox. I'm from Pubnico, and culturally, I'm a little confused because I'm Scots-Irish and through my mother German, and through distant family members, both my father and my mother, I have Indian extraction. But it's Cape Cod, Wampanoag, and Narragansetts. So kind of different than most people would probably have. I started school in Pubnico in a two-room schoolhouse. And in grade 2, I finished up in March so that my mom and dad could move to Seal Island, where my dad was the assistant keeper there. And we lived on the island until sometime in the fall. And we came back, and I lived down on Main Street, 618 Main, which was at that time right over top of the Milton Groceteria, which for a kid is like living in a candy store. And went to grade 3, started grade 3, pardon me, in Milton at the old school, the old big high school that was there, tall school, not high. And moved to Parade Street and went to the school just up here. And then my parents bought a trailer and put it in Pleasant Lake, and that was the longest I was in one school. I was in one school there for 4.5 years. And then I went away, just so you know, my parents took a job in Roberts Island with the Matto estate, and I went to Argyle. In the second year I was there, I went to school up in the Annapolis Valley. And let's see, I came back to Yarmouth, went to the high school, and my parents again moved, and away we went to Cape Cod. And when I graduated from Cape Cod, I came home and been here ever since. My thing about growing up is that I had a friend who had a very, very serious congenital condition. The brittle bones is the common name for it. It's osteogenesis imperfecta. It means the bone doesn't have collagen, and so he was very fragile. When you picked him up, if you put too much pressure on one finger, you could break a rib, for example. So you had to be very careful. And I was one of the few people that he allowed to carry him around. And coming up to an interesting because this is 150, in the 100th year, they had a centennial train came to Yarmouth. And Terry wanted to go to the centennial train, and I said, no problem, I'll take you. Well, we got there, and the aisles were only about this wide, and his chair was wider than that. So I said, I'll carry you. So I picked him up, and we're going through the train, and we got about halfway through, a little better than halfway through. And Terry said, you need to sit down, because he said, you're going to kill yourself. And I thought, where am I going to sit? Because, I mean, we're in a museum, a traveling museum, you know. So it was made to look like the office of McDonald. And so I went in and sat him down in a chair and turned it a little bit so that nobody would see it obvious. And I went over and sat at the desk. And of course, I have a beard since then. And people came through, and what a neat likeness. That must have been him when he was young. And after a while, we got rested up, and I picked him up and stepped back over the wire and walked back out, and there was a Mountie just at the door. And Terry, I don't know what he thought, me carrying Terry through there, but anyway, he was looking me over pretty carefully, and Terry picked up and said, it was a good exhibition. So it was quite an enjoyable thing. Most of the things that I did that I really have good memories of around here until Terry died involved Terry. So sure. When I first came back from Cape Cod, I went fishing with my uncle, lobster fishing with my uncle, and until Christmas. And then after Christmas and New Year's, I went to Bonda, and I got on one of the Bonda boats as a cook. I had been a cook in the States. While I went to school, I also cooked in a restaurant. And did that for a while. And then they had something called Nova Scotia New Star. Nova Scotia New Star was a corporation funded by the federal government to help people to better their lives, no matter what their circumstances were. And so I was hired, initially I was hired as a go-between between the crew that were on the boat that they were training on and the trainees, and I was the go-between between the trainees and the research people as well. And so I was always in Dutch. Somebody was always mad at me because I didn't do something. But it was a lot of fun. I spent a lot of time here in around Yarmouth with young men and women who, for whatever reason, never finished high school, and we got them into programs to get them high school. We had the fisheries program that we had. At that time, you could get your skipper's license or your mate's license or whatever it was that you were applying for up in Pictou. They had a course up there. And almost all of our fisheries guys went through that. I went through the course, but I never ever got the certificate. I don't know how come, but somebody forgot to give me the certificate. So I never was able to say that I was Captain so-and-so. Well, the people. We have the most wonderful bunch of people, and it's the most culturally guarded secret.
Yarmouth County Museum and Archives recognizes the support of the Province of Nova Scotia. We are pleased to work in partnership with the Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage to develop and promote our cultural resources for all Nova Scotians.